The second part of Chapter 3 continues the analysis of Computron and their forecasted performance for 2020. In Part A, we looked at 5 categories of basic ratios used to evaluate the performance of a firm. At the end of Part A, looking at a recap of all the calculated ratios versus the 2 previous years and industry averages emphasized how difficult it can be to interpret ratio results. In Part B, we'll expand our analysis to look at common size statements, the DuPont system, as well as some other issues regarding a ratio analysis. To keep us current with Computron's numbers, their financial statements are presented again here and on the following slides. Income statements for 2019 and forecasted 2020. Balance sheets, the asset side, liabilities and equity, and the other data given for Computron. With a common size balance sheet, all values are divided by total assets. This facilitates comparisons across years with companies of various sizes and with industry averages. As you can see, Computron's short-term investments is much lower than average, while their fixed assets are much higher. The firm's percentage of equity at 59.4 in 2019 versus an industry average of 68%, indicating that Computron has more debt, which they expect to reduce in 2020. Computron has significantly higher percentage of net fixed assets versus the industry. Additionally, as we said, the firm's percentage of debt is also higher than the industry average of 20%. In a common size income statement, all values are divided by sales. Computron's cost of goods sold has declined, but is still much higher than industry averages. EBIT and net income are significantly lower than average. This gives a percentage change income statement from 2018 to 2020. We see that 2020 sales are projected to grow 20% from 2018, and that net income is projected to grow almost 6%. So they're projected to become more profitable. For 2019, sales grew 9%, but net income fell by 28.5%. For 2020, they're projecting that sales will grow by 20%, with net income growing by 5.7%. Definitely improving, but still a way to go. From the percentage change balance sheet, we see that total assets grew 20.1% for 2019 versus a sales increase of only 9%. For 2020, Computron is projecting asset growth of 22.5%, with sales growing 20%. So asset utilization still remains an issue for the firm. Looking at the percentage changes on the liability side, Computron has significantly reduced notes payable, but no change in long-term debt. Total equity significantly increased. Computron's balance sheet analysis suggests from 2018 to 19, assets grew over 20%, but net income declined. Asset growth was centered in accounts receivable and inventory. This implies that the firm is not collecting on sales in a timely manner and appears to have inventory piling up. The growth was funded by the increase in debt. For 2020, the firm is projecting only a small increase in total assets, but a huge reduction in inventory and in notes payable. In ratio analysis, as the book says, it's sometimes easy to miss the forest for all the trees. So many numbers, some good, some not so good. How do we drill down to where the problem is? The CFO at DuPont was faced with this problem and developed the DuPont system to directly relate ratios to ROE, the metric most investors focus on. The DuPont system, or DuPont identity, breaks ROE down into 3 components. Profit margin measures profitability. Total asset turnover measures asset management. The equity multiplier measures use of financial leverage. So you can see that profit margin times total asset turnover is equal to ROA. So ROE is equal to ROA times the equity multiplier. Starting with return on equity, ROE is net income divided by equity. Breaking that down, ROE is equal to net income over total assets times total assets over equity. The first component in that, net income over total assets, is ROA. So ROE is equal to ROA times the equity multiplier we saw in Part A. Breaking down further, break ROA down into 2 components, profit margin and total asset turnover. So ROE is equal to net income divided by sales times sales divided by total assets times total assets divided by equity. Sales cancels out, total assets cancels out, and you're left with net income divided by equity, the basic equation for ROE. Looking at Computron's DuPont components and the industry, we can isolate what's driving the firm's lower ROE. lower than industry profit margin and total asset turnover, and more debt. But if Computron's profit margin were the 7.2 of the industry, the ROE would rise to 14.8, much closer to the industry average. Ratio analysis, like most quantitative endeavors, has potential problems and limitations. Trying to compare a firm like GE, who makes light bulbs and jet aircraft engines, is virtually impossible from the outside since they report consolidated data. Just because firms follow GAAP, generally accepted accounting practice, does not mean they're reporting totally comparable numbers. Management has an enormous amount of leeway in how some items are handled. It's in the notes to the financial statements. Besides just looking at the numbers when analyzing a firm, qualitative factors should be considered as well. Revenues tied to a single anything is risky. Sears in the past, Walmart now are examples. Control without investment. As they put more and more of your product on their shelves, you expand to meet the demand. They control you and they haven't invested in you. A firm cannot be a one-trick pony. Continued growth depends on ongoing product development and innovation. Pet Rock, never heard of it? Versus Apple, who comes out with new products continually. Firms integrate vertically to avoid dependence on a single supplier or a single distribution channel. Anytime a firm does business in any way outside the U.S., they're exposed to exchange rate risk as well as the risk of differing laws and protections. Warren Buffett has said that if you cannot raise your prices by 10% without serious problems, you're in the wrong business. Legal and regulatory issues abound in terms of product liability. Consider the pharmaceutical industry. This ends Chapter 3 and Unit B. Now that we've reviewed time value of money, Unit A, and accounting fundamentals, Unit B, we're ready to move on to more finance-related topics. With Unit C, we'll take up Chapter 5, bonds, and very closely related Chapter 24, bankruptcy.